to anybody who feels like they're not really having the impact they want, or things are going well, but something just feels a little bit off, whether that's internally or whether that's just actually not seeing the kind of impact that you want to see. First of all, there are some fundamental traits that as an entrepreneur, you should be able to do, sales and marketing being one of them. So if you've grown your business to the point where it's pretty successful, but it still relies on you, the first thing I would do is I would try and take yourself out of the business so that the business can run on 1 to 2 hours a week of your time. A previous client reached out to me. He said, I've got good clients, I've got good projects, we're making money, but for some reason, I'm not really satisfied with the impact I feel I can have. And so what I said back to him was, if you feel like you're not having the kind of impact you want with your business right now, then this episode of the Creative Courage podcast is for you. If you haven't tuned in before, this podcast is all about building a creative business that gives you more freedom, more fulfillment, and more financial security. And today I want to talk specifically about the fulfillment element. When I say fulfillment, what I really mean is that feeling that you get at the end of the day, the end of the week, the end of the year. When you look back, do you feel like the work that you did matters? Do you feel a sense of purpose? Do you feel like the work that you're doing is having a genuine impact in the world, or at least in the lives of your clients? Now, this episode was spurred on by a message that I got from a previous client that I worked with. So he reached out to me and he said, there's nothing really wrong with my business right now. I've got good clients, I've got good projects, we're making money, but for some reason, I'm not really satisfied with the impact that I feel I can have in terms of business and in terms of entrepreneurship. So he says, I know the type of impact I can have as a creative studio, but I feel like there's more out there for me. He said, I remember you used to run a creative studio and you transitioned into coaching. What was the reason you decided to do that? And then he said, I know some people say that you should just stick with one thing, and if it's working and you're good at it, then you should keep doing it. But I also see a lot of entrepreneurs transition to different areas in business as well. And so that's why I'm wondering if I should switch things up or if I'm just being distracted. And so what I said back to him was a few things. First of all, this idea of just focusing on one thing, I think was more important probably 5 or 6 years ago than it is today. And that's really for one reason. The reason is technology. The tools we have at our disposal now, the AI tools even, allow us to take an idea that we have in our head and create a kind of minimum viable product or a minimum working version of that thing very quickly. We can prototype very quickly. We can get ideas out of our head very quickly. Now, it didn't always used to be like that. It used to be that if we had an idea, we had to find a team of people to help us execute it. We had to have the resources to kind of get it off the ground. And so I think now it's easier than ever to kind of test out ideas and potentially pivot from one area of business into another or into a completely new business totally. I actually read an email by Justin Welsh the other day. Some of you might be familiar with Justin. He's kind of like an online creator, big advocate of the one-person business. And he basically said this kind of portfolio career is becoming more and more popular now because it's easier than ever to get an idea off the ground. Now, obviously that comes with its challenges, but I think that's the first thing to say, that 3 or 4 years ago, I would have given the strong advice, no, just like focus on one thing, become an expert, be known for one thing, get really good at it and kind of become the best in the industry, differentiate yourself. More so now, I do still agree with that premise that you want to be known for something, but I think it's easier now to have lots of different projects or even potentially different businesses or business ideas. Not that I'd suggest you do that all at once, but have a business idea, launch it, get it working, and then move on to the next thing. And that kind of is the nature of entrepreneurship. So if you feel like you're more of an entrepreneur than you are maybe a just kind of creative, as in actually just doing the work, you feel like you have lots of ideas, you feel like you like the idea of business, then these are some of the thoughts that you might be having. So the first thing I said to my client was, yeah, like acknowledge that it's easier now than it ever has been to get ideas off the ground. Having said that, there are some fundamental traits and there are some fundamental things that as an entrepreneur, you should be able to do, sales and marketing being one of them. So if you've grown your business to the point where it's pretty successful, but it still relies on you, like you're selling time for money. And I said to him, the first thing I would do is I would try and take yourself out of the business so that the business can run on probably 1 to 2 hours a week of your time. Now, you're probably familiar with the 4-hour work week from Tim Ferriss, but really like 1 or 2 hours a week. And I say 1 or 2 hours a week because really in an ideal world, your business should be able to run an hour-long meeting at the beginning of the week to get your team clear on priorities and what to do, and then an hour-long meeting at the end of the week to see what they did and give them some feedback. If you can get to that point, and especially if you can kind of take holidays, you can take a few weeks, maybe even a month out of your business, and it kind of still ticks along without you, then that's like a really good place to be. So the first thing I would do is I would try and take myself out of the business so it runs without me on 1 or 2 hours per week. If I can do that, then it means I'm thinking more like an entrepreneur. I'm thinking more like an owner than I am thinking like an operator of that business. And this is kind of where most creatives and most studio owners get stuck. So I'm hearing a lot of people right now talking about this idea of doing something else, maybe selling the current business that they have, feeling a little bit like they've got itchy feet. And that was the first thing I advised to them is like, can you take yourself out of the business first and foremost? Because if you can't, and you don't have the skills to do that, you can't find the right team to do that, as an example, then it doesn't really matter what you work on next, you're going to have the same problem. You're just creating another job for yourself. And so what you want to try and do is you want to try and run businesses. You want to own businesses if you want to be more entrepreneurial and have more impact in the world. Let's talk a little bit about impact and its relation to fulfillment, because I think it's really important. So at the beginning, my client said to me, I know you had an agency and then you moved to coaching. What was the reason for that? And you may have heard my story before, you may have not heard my story before, but the reason for that was really quite simple. I just felt like I wasn't having the kind of impact that I really wanted to have with the work that I was doing. So at the time I was building websites, I was designing things for people, I was helping kind of manage their social media, and it was great. Clients were happy. And there were 1 or 2 clients that it really did shift things for them in their business. It really did help them to get more business. It helped them to feel more confident and the way they present themselves. But those situations were kind of few and far between. And so I just decided I had a point in my life, a very significant point where I was running this business that was fully remote. I was in Canada at the time. I was snowboarding. I was living this kind of digital nomad life. And from the outside, it looked like I had everything figured out. It looked like I had this amazing life where I was traveling the world, running this fully remote business. But deep down inside, I just started to feel a little bit like my client, kind of like I wasn't having the impact that I wanted to have. I was a little bit unfulfilled. And a close family friend passed away very suddenly and unexpectedly. And he wasn't very old. And it really made me start to question life. It made me start to question what I wanted to do, what I wanted to be remembered for. And I really thought about this idea, if I only had a few years to live and I didn't have to worry about money or, how I was going to earn a living, like what would I be doing? Who are the people that I'd be surrounding myself with? What kind of work would I really want to be doing that I look back at the end of my life and feel really proud of? And that was the thing that made me transition into what I'm doing today, into kind of more coaching, more consulting, but specifically solving bigger problems for creatives. And I kind of came to this conclusion that creatives were my people. I thought of myself as a creative, but more importantly, I came to this conclusion that creativity in its rawest form, like our ability to take a vision or an idea out of our head and bring it to life so that other people can interact with it, is what makes us unique as humans. Now, I'm sure you could argue that like AI can do that or whatever, but we still have to prompt the AI at the moment to come up with the ideas, right? So I still believe that creativity at its rawest form is really one of the things that makes us unique as humans. And it's also directly related to our ability to solve problems for people. Like, we have to use creativity to solve problems. And so I saw all of these amazingly talented, creative people unable to use their skills to solve meaningful problems because they were making some fundamental mistakes and they didn't have some fundamental skills around sales and marketing, and they didn't have the confidence in themselves. They didn't really understand what they were selling or what problem they were solving. I saw all this stuff and I thought, I want to have a bigger impact. I want to inspire people. I want to empower people to go out into the world and solve meaningful problems that they actually care about, that they get to the end of their life and think, do you know what? The work I did really mattered. It didn't just help Nike sell some more trainers. It didn't just help Coke sell some more soft drinks or whatever, like it actually made a difference. It had an impact on somebody's life. And in order to do that kind of work, you have to know how to communicate value. You have to be able to sell people into ideas. So, that's a little bit about my story and my background, but it was really about this idea that I didn't feel like the work that I was doing was having a big enough impact. And I realized that life was short. So to kind of come full circle to this idea of fulfillment and to answer this question that my client asked me is that, number one, we have some really powerful tools right now to make an impact at scale. And so you should be looking at those things. You should be really thinking like, how does AI, how does automation fit into my business right now? How can those tools allow me to have more impact with what I'm doing? The second thing is, if you want to think more like an entrepreneur, you want to be more like an entrepreneur, you feel like there's another chapter of your life that you're being called to right now, rather than just kind of jumping to it and leaving everything else behind to sort of crash to the ground, why not try and use some of those skills to actually build a business that runs without you? Because that is a real form of impact, where you've like taken something out of your head, you've utilized your skills to solve problems for clients, whether that's in branding, video, copywriting, whatever your creative skill set is. You've done that. Now, if you can take yourself out of it, i.e., you can take the intellectual property from your head and you can put it into a process that other people can execute on your behalf, then that really is impact at scale. So if you can get good at doing that, and again, this is just a skill, it is just a process, then you can take that skill set into other ventures and you can say, right, there's that agency that I built and it basically runs itself. I spend a few hours a week on it. Now I have the capacity and, more importantly, the abundance. Like, you're not starting from scratch, like, oh, I'm just going to burn that agency to the ground. Now I don't really have any money and I've got this idea, but I'm worried about how to pay the bills. If you can keep that agency ticking along, if you can keep it essentially feeding itself and paying you a bit of a salary every month, then you're in an incredible position. You're keeping it ticking along. You build up that skill set. And also now you have the free time and the free energy and the free headspace to think about what the next venture is or what the next thing is that you want to build. So that's my advice to anybody who feels like they're not really having the impact they want, or things are going well, but something just feels a little bit off, whether that's kind of internally or whether that's just actually not seeing the kind of impact that you want to see with the work that you're doing. That would be my advice. First of all, look at the tools that you can utilize to have more impact. But secondly, see if you can think more like an owner rather than an operator. See if you can think more entrepreneurially and take yourself out of that business so it still runs without you, and then think about the next venture or the next thing that you want to work on. I hope this episode has been valuable for you. As always, if you did enjoy it, please share it with a friend and hit the subscribe button. You've been listening to the Creative Courage Podcast. My name is Matt Essen.